Hey, welcome to Voices of Impact. So, I want to introduce an amazing coach. So, Naseem is an introverted writer, facilitator, and founder of Kimiya Coaching, where she supports professionals and creatives of color navigating burnout, career transitions, and seasons of recalibration. So she works with those who are ready to pause long enough to hear themselves clearly and play long enough to imagine new possibilities. So, as a first generation college graduate, eldest daughter, and child of immigrants living with a double diaspora, Naseem brings a culturally grounded and deeply reflective lens to leadership and growth. Her work centers clarity, healing, and alignment in a world that often rewards constant motion over meaning. So, what makes this conversation especially aligned is that what we both stand for, right? So, slowing down is a strategic act, it's not a weakness. Courage grows through experimentation, not perfection. And sustainable growth honors healing as much as achievements, going against the societal conditionings. So, in this episode, we explore what it truly means to slow down without falling behind and how pausing can become the most powerful move moving forward. So, welcome, Naseem, to this show. So glad to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here and excited for our conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Just love that energy. Yeah, Naseem, tell us about your journey from first gen college graduate and eldest daughter of immigrants to coach supporting first gen introverts and creativity. What pivotal moments led you here?
Yeah, so my career began in education. I think with a lot of child of immigrants, you're kind of taught to pick the one lane that you're going to pursue, and stick with it, get your education, get your job, and build your career under that umbrella or in that space. And for me, that was education, and it didn't work out that way. I thought stick to education because that's what I was taught. You stay in the one industry, the one role, the one company, and you just keep going, move up the ranks or whatever you want to call it. And so I thought, and that's what I saw around me. The teachers that when I was in school, the teachers that I had, they were also, they stayed there 30, 40 years, whatever, until retirement in the same classroom, etc. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing as well. And that didn't happen. I had a forced pivot where I kind of had to rethink what I was doing and how I was doing it. I was in a long-term job search. And so it was challenging. And I think my internal voice was telling me one thing, but this like external voice and multiple voices of like, your parents and other people in the community were like, oh, stay in your lane, keep
Right.
going, right? And that I couldn't do that anymore. That wasn't sustainable. And it was just making it worse, the job search worse and worse. So finally I decided, I'm like, okay, I need to step back from this job search and see what's actually going on. There was a lot of factors at the time that were happening within industry, within just the world around us that were contributing to the job search. And I was like, it's not just me. And so I decided to go to pastry school. Baking was a big part of me growing up and something that I got interested in as I grew up. And I thought, okay, let me pivot. I will go towards the food industry and completely make this pivot and find a job in the food industry. Surprisingly, pastry school opened the door to nonprofit, and I ended up at a nonprofit that was looking for someone with an education and food background. And I was like, okay, here we go. We're gonna follow the breadcrumbs into nonprofit. So I worked in nonprofit for a bit, first at that role, and then I got into mentorship and supporting first gen college, in particular communities of color, landing their first job or their internship and supporting them through the job search process and kind of beyond. And that eventually led me to coaching. And each of the pivots I've had to make, in my career came from that pausing, whether it was like that forced pause that I mentioned earlier, or actually an intentional pause where I was reflecting. And pastry school ended up being the experiment. And,
Right.
the realization of having to uh, do these pauses to listen to myself is what led me to coaching and supporting other people who are in the same boat and trying to reclaim whether it's clarity, creativity, alignment on their own terms.
Wow. First of all, kudos to you for being that rebel, that trailblazer, because I can relate to everything that you're saying because I also had a very long job search. Wanted to, like, parents told me, right, immigrants do the typical tech and engineering, all of that linear thing. And I had to experiment with that too. But it's not easy going from, you know how you said your heart says one thing, your mind says something else. But kudos to you for following your heart. And I know it's not, I can relate because it's not easy as a woman of color to do this and, kind of follow our heart and just go in that path. So I'm so glad that you found your true purpose and your calling and, going to pastry school and then nonprofit into coaching, a tremendous amount of growth for you. So I'm inspiring. You savor quiet rituals like chai and international drama. So how do those personal rhythms influence how you hold space for other people and other creatives out there?
Yeah, I think it's that slowdown, right? Like I think it's giving yourself those opportunities to just be present in the moment in whatever that is you're doing, right? Like for anyone that's made chai, good chai takes
Good.
time, right? It's the multiple boils. It's like adding the tea leaves and whatever spices that you want to add to it. The minute you walk away from it, every person that makes chai knows the minute you walk away is when it's going to overflow, right?
Right.
So just like accepting the process and the slowing down, right? Where we're so hung up on that hustle, like go, go, go culture, right? That when we are in moments of slowing down, it's hard for us to slow down because our mindset is very
Yeah.
much on what's the next thing? What's the next thing? So by doing that myself, I'm also hopefully able to do that for clients and create a safe space for them to explore, to take this time to pause themselves, to give themselves permission, and not equate, a lot of the things of being a child of immigrants and different cultural things that are part of my lived experience is that we often equate this pausing or the slowing down with laziness, and it's not laziness, it's not a luxury, right? It's a very intentional thing that we're doing with our time. We're listening to ourselves, we're recalibrating and reflecting and seeing what's actually going on, what's going on inside and what's going on
Right,
outside.
absolutely. And I love how you talked about the chai because that's when I relax and I pause, right? And like you said, that's when I just love how you use the analogy. Like as soon as you go somewhere else, it just overflows. So I totally relate to
It's
all
the
of this.
heartbreak of anyone
Yeah.
that's making proper chai.
Especially for my mom, it's like even today, she's like, "Oh my God, it's gonna," like, it's like so like she's in tension mode, but it is, what you said, it's that pause, right? To recalibrate. And this is something I want to put out there that's very important. Like you said, it was intentional, especially for executives that I've worked with as an executive coach. I know you're also in the career coaching space, career transition that sometimes where I was like that, right? I was in that masculine energy. I'm a huge go-getter. So even till today, I have to like remind myself to slow down. So just going into like a girls' night or having a mocktail or even chai at home is like understanding like why am I here? Going back to my why, my mission. What am I trying to do? Why is this important? Why am I hustling? Right. So just kind of going back and having those slow down moments are super important. And one thing you said was amazing, right? It's really not a place of laziness, right? And we tend to kind of have that assumption as like, oh, someone's slow and they're just not caring too much and that's laziness. It's really necessary, especially for a woman. It's just kind of slowing down to speeding up. That's kind of the thing that I have. And listening to yourself, listening to your body. If it needs the rest, take it, right? If it needs time to kind of explore certain things, you don't always have to take action, right? So that's not what our body's built for especially for women.
Yeah.
So just kind of having these reminders all the time. So I love how you really emphasize on that pause and play. So going into a little more deeper on how do you help clients differentiate between procrastination and a necessary pause?
Yeah, I think it comes down to that avoidance question. Are you
Yeah.
using that moment of pause, right, to avoid something? Is it interrupting like your reactive patterns, right? Or is it giving you space to, where it's giving you space to like notice your intuition, your values, etc. And that's where, your kind of risk taking becomes intentional rather than fear driven. And for me, especially when I just made the decision to go to PhD school, it wasn't just like a one day, one moment decision, right? It
Right.
took a long time because it was going against what I was taught. It was going
Yeah.
against what people were telling me, right? But something inside of me kept saying, but Naseem, you have to like, this
Right.
isn't, whatever you're doing right now isn't working, right?
Yeah.
Because of just the world around you at the time, like
Right.
jobs were scarce. There were a lot of people in the same boat as me at the time. And it wasn't working. So it took a little bit of time to like finally accept the decision before I said it out loud. So that pause helped me to do that, and again, it's not like it doesn't happen overnight, right? These kinds of things, because we're
Right.
going through a lot there, right? We're navigating cultural expectations, family expectations. We can't separate those parts of ourselves. And I hope when clients come to me, we're looking at your whole self, right? We're
Exactly.
not just we can't just look at one part of you and say, okay, this is what you're going to do, right? Like we have to honor our whole selves and our lived experiences so that we can find what it is that we're looking for, so that we can get at what it is that's going on in the right way, so that we can do that play, do that like experimenting, and that taking action in a way that feels right for you and your life at this moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I also love how you said it's not like really understanding your avoidance because that comes up a lot. Right. And with the people that I've worked with, or in general, the people I've talked to, it's like, let me just put it to the side. Knowing what your patterns are, where it's coming from. It could be from family, a societal conditioning. Knowing the root cause analysis of it makes you really overcome those fears and, not think of it as like laziness or procrastination and move it to a more positive reframe. Like, it's okay to pause. It's okay to ask yourself. And like you said, it took a while to kind of get to that place. Same thing for me. I've changed a couple of jobs. I had to pivot. I did like 4 pivots before I even got to this. Even now, at times, I'm like, yes, I'll do this, full-time
Yeah.
coaching and a part-time. So I'm still experimenting. I mean, experimentation is a lifelong thing. And I want to say that out loud. It's never ending. You're always going to be experimenting, but at the same time, balancing that out with slowing down is very necessary because you're more intentional about where your time and energy goes. Is it really aligned? And then understanding at times, yes, you might go back to like, hey, my heart says one thing, my logic says something else. I have to go against, the grain. But, you have to kind of go back to your why again, right? I'm here because I'm a trailblazer, right? Just kind of having that voice in your mind that keeps coming up and listening to it and all of that. So which is great, right? What you have said. Amazing.
Yeah. I mean,
And
when
yeah,
you're always rooted in like curiosity and wonder, right? Like, I think
yeah,
that that's where your intuition lives, right? You start with a
yes,
question, and you take that question and you kind of run with it in however way. For me, it's journaling, right? Like sometimes if like something
yes,
comes up, I journal through that, and I definitely offer that to my clients who also either journal already or want to start journaling. That's a good way to start. Start with like what feelings are coming up, or like if there's like a big question that's on your mind that keeps coming up. That's your inner voice, or your whatever you want to call it, inner voice,
yeah,
intuition, your
right.
gut, whatever, right? That's coming up and trying to tell you something.
Yes, exactly. And that's all about, especially for women. It's important to lead with intuition. So yeah, if you feel like something's off or misaligned, or your body's telling it something, and like
Yeah.
Naseem said, you're journaling, right? Even these questions I'm asking, I'm also thinking about them as we're speaking, right? These are also journal type questions or thought provoking questions like, yeah, so what is my why? Who am I trying to serve as, like, what are your people? And what am I here to do? Like, why do I want to do this, right? So, and where is this coming from? Why am I living in
Yeah.
fear? Like, how do I overcome these patterns from stopping, right? So, all of that stuff. So going into societal conditioning. So how does familial or societal conditioning complicate boundary setting? Because I know as South Asians, we have gone through this. This is something I had to learn and I'm still learning. But a question for you on what would you say about how it complicates boundary setting?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And it's for sure something that I'm learning and unlearning every
Mhm.
time it comes
Right.
up. I think just more broadly as a whole, we've been conditioned to believe, first of all, on the work piece that, more hours equals more output, right? And so we tend to push through even when we're feeling exhausted, when we're feeling sick, whatever is going on, right? We just push through. We're like, no, one more meeting, let me get through it,
Right.
let me do this, right? So you're not necessarily thinking with intention or strategically, you're just trying to get to the next thing. But then, it doesn't feel good because it feels like you didn't put your best in or you dropped the ball on something, etc. Right. So like your cognitive load is definitely full, and the constant task switching and stuff like that, it increases stress and again reduces effectiveness. And then where the cultural piece can come in, particularly for women of color, is with our perfectionism, with our
Yeah.
overthinking tendencies, right? I call myself a recovering perfectionist, and I'm always trying to
Likewise.
unlearn. Yeah, I'm trying to unlearn that piece of it, right? Of like, it doesn't have to be perfect, and what does that mean? And especially as an introvert, I think about or process things. It takes me a little bit longer to do all of those things, right? But I have to put a stop on it because I can't sit and process all the time. And that's where my perfectionist comes in. I can't have everything, all the research figured out. So I kind of give myself like, okay, if you're 70 to 80%,
Right.
sure, or like you have enough to that percent, you're good. You have to let
Yeah.
go of like that 20,
Yeah.
30% because you just can't. It's just too much. You have to move forward,
Right.
which is why that low pressure, giving yourself low pressure, like experimenting, right? Permission to experiment, trying ideas without judgment or that perfectionist voice is super important. And then as, South Asians, we think about, identify as eldest daughter. So there are definitely things that I bring into my work, and most of my work has been and continues to be service based, where I'm giving, I'm supporting, etc. So it feeds into a lot of the things that are already there from eldest daughter trauma or whatever. And then the perfectionism also and all the things. So boundary setting becomes super important. I remember one of the roles that I had, we were facilitating a program at the time, and our program participants had access to my phone number. But before I gave it to them, I set a boundary. I'm like, look, if it's not an emergency, if you're texting or calling me on the weekend and it's not an emergency, it's outside of our hours or working hours, I'm not going to respond to you until the next business day, whether that's a Monday or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted to be clear that, even if I receive the message, it's considered work, right? So, but I have to put that boundary. Otherwise, I'm always on, and I can't always be on in that way. It's just not possible. Like you have to have the time to recharge, to rest in between as well. That
For
was
sure.
challenging, but the more I said it to the participants, the easier it got of
Yeah.
like, because it was also, I was teaching them this should be a boundary too, because your work may have access to your phone number and like and we have our phones on us all the time, right? So that accessibility is there, but that doesn't mean we should be giving it time or giving them time when it's not,
Exactly.
within those hours.
Yeah, and I love how I said because I can relate to everything. It took me a long time to get to this. I just set some boundaries for not just clients, but for home. Like I just told my own team, like I'm taking Mondays off, right? So first of all, I want to say like, kudos to you. I love that for you that you just like, your boundaries because I know a lot of people who, are similar to us, especially women of color, who are like, should I speak up about this boundary? Should I just play small? And just a message that it's okay to set that boundary, not be guilty about it. Cause there are times where like maybe I shouldn't have done that. But it's okay. Like if you want
Hmm.
to prioritize rest, you want to prioritize yourself, that's not selfish. So set any boundary, whether if it's with clients or your team, or even on like a personal with your family, right? So if your family wants you to do something, but you're just like, I want to take some rest, go ahead and, just say it out loud. Right. So and I think we've had that societal conditioning where it's, especially for me, when you say perfectionism, I still have it. So my mom is like super like perfectionist. It has to be 100% perfect. It took me a while I did that in my business, right? I was like, I have to have my website super perfect, my banner and this. And then I just realized like what you said was right with the experimentation. So take small steps first. And if you want to come back to, we're fine. Like if it's like 50%, not that bad, just go with it, right? So it's like these things that help you overcome that overthinking, that fear, right? So, like, don't dwell on it too much. Just kind of be like, hey, it's good enough. We're here to kind of put it out there. Let's see what happens. And then, like you said, experiment to play with it. So, absolutely. I love this. And so going into, let's see, how do you help with clients define success beyond external benchmarks?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And I think it changes from client to client because I think everyone defines success differently. For one
Right.
client, it could be, I want to experiment through a career pivot. So I want to use coaching to figure out what that is, what role or what industry I should be pivoting to. And that's what success looks like for them. For another client, it could be, I'm in this role, it's toxic, but it's a really horrible job market right now, and I can't afford to leave it. So, how do I navigate my current challenges so that it's good enough, so that I
Mhm.
can have enough energy and give it what I need to stay, and while I still do some of like the job search things I should be doing. So
Mhm.
I think success is very very personal and very very much um
Mhm.
changes depending on the client, and it can change while we're coaching. And I had a client who came in with a specific set of coaching goals, and as we were going through, she had, I call them light bulb moments, from
Right.
my teaching days, where you see the students make the connections, and they've processed and like their face lights up, so they've had their aha moment.
Right.
And she had her light bulb moment, and she kind of lit
Nice.
up, and she's like, this is what I need to be doing. And I was so proud of her, and also like really happy that I was able to support and guide her as her
Yeah.
coach to get her to that place. And then we pivoted within our coaching sessions, and pivoted her goals because she's decided this is like the new direction. So success can also change. Something I'm learning right now is the fluidity or flexibility of like some of these terms that we've kind of grown
Right.
up with, and like we're taught that they were like concrete, like there was only kind of like one thing. And now I'm kind of like flipping that a little bit, even for myself, of
Right.
like they can be fluid. Like we plan things. So for example, I hate the word resolutions because there's
Yeah.
so much like attached to it
Right.
in so many different ways. So like a couple of years ago, I started calling them intentions. What is my yearly intention?
Right.
And I
Nice.
check in with them, quarterly or whatever. But you're planning for future self, but present self doesn't know what's happening to future self,
Exactly.
right? So
Exactly.
like your goal in January or February may not match, future self in March or April, because something has shifted. So that goal has to adapt too. So like I'm also giving myself that pause moment to also be a little bit more flexible with some of these things. And even
Yeah.
success, right? There are different levels of success, and what
Exactly.
that can mean, short term, long term, industry success, right? Et cetera. It just depends on, what you're seeking, and how you're defining it for yourself.
Yeah. I do agree with all of that you said. Cause I mean, it really depends. Like for executives, I think when they come in as a coaching client or anyone, it's like, I want this revenue. They have like this long-term goal and then they're kind of
Hmm.
attached to it, like you said. But it sometimes doesn't work that way. Like you have to kind of go and navigate it, like you said, pause and play experiment with it. It might not go as you planned. And this is something that I had to learn, right, the hard way. Cause coming from that South Asian, like you said, there's rigid structures and it has to be linear. And if it wasn't linear, it's like, oh my God, we're going crazy. But that's how you learn and grow, right? And like you said, success, we look at other people. And I said this in another episode of we can't compare our journeys to others. Everyone has a different journey. And like you said, different levels of success. One person, it is about money. It's about compensation. Totally fine. I love that. Another one, it's about, like you said, when you're pivoting from a toxic workplace into something better, it could just be like, hey, I don't really mind the competition. Maybe it's really just a healthy work environment. And in my case, that's what it was, right? So I never was from a healthy, family or workplaces. That itself was a success for me. So, with different definitions of thriving, what that looks like, even as entrepreneurs. So, for me, it's successful when I'm just, like you said, when a client has an aha moment or that light bulb, it's like you see that joy on the client. And that itself is
Mm-hmm.
like, I feel like I'm a winner, right? So, for another person, it could be like, I've worked with other coaches who are like, hey, I reached that 50K a month goal. So, like you said, everyone has different levels of success. So, kind of understanding where they are and meeting them where they are at right now. So, love these answers are amazing. So, yeah, and I know how you talked about advice for creatives and career changes, but if someone released one burnout driven belief, what should it be?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I think that it would be that it's not your fault. And as someone
Mhm.
who's navigated burnout myself, it's not you. It's a lot of it is the culture that we're in, that hustle culture, and that visible hustle is your proof of worth. And we tie our worth to how much we do.
Right.
That internalized cultural pressure, whether it's your lived experience coming from lived experiences or the work culture that you're in as well. And it's partly, or it's part of, the over functioning and the people pleasing kind of coming together. And
Right.
it takes a long time to heal. I'm still healing from it in some
Yeah, me
ways,
too. Me too.
and it has to do with boundary setting too. It
Yeah.
has to do with, making sure you have the right people around you, as well, that will support you. It also, I think it also comes from like that rest. There are different kinds of rest, and it's just rest in your body and your mind, but also rest in how you're like getting yourself back, um, back to, either the work, or if it's like a pivot, or whatever it is. Like, I think
Yeah.
that all of that plays into rest, which is under, I call it the pause, right? Like, what are
Right.
you doing here? And again, it's not your fault. Like, I wish someone
Exactly.
told me that when I was experiencing
Yeah.
it, and when I was experiencing it, I didn't have the words for it. I just knew what I was
Right.
feeling in my body.
Right.
It did I Nothing felt right, nothing felt good enough. And
Exactly.
then you turn that, especially as a perfectionist, right? Like, you turn that into, well, I got to do more. So then I was answering emails outside of my work hours on weekends. I was checking emails. I was doing all the things, and like it still wasn't quote unquote right, or it wasn't doing
Yeah.
what I thought it would do.
Yeah.
And it just made it worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. I can relate to everything you're saying because sometimes you have like the outside noise like forcing you to do things, but you realize, like you said, I was also job searching at the same time. I was pushing myself, I was forcing it,
Yeah.
even though my body was like, no, something is wrong. It's misaligned. Like I would try, it would look like it's happening and it would just fall apart. Right. And that's when I knew I got, because I'm very like God fearing and I listen to the divine and I realized like that I found like it's like a signal, like a gut thing where it's like something's not working, right? So I'm like, I don't want to push myself harder. And then that made me realize like I need to pause, I need to rest. And like you said, rest comes in every aspect. And
Yeah.
for women especially, yes, we have the mental and but you also have the emotional rest, right? So take a pause and understand your emotions. If you want to feel sad, cry it out, right? Because I think we're taught, and this is something that I was taught, is like suppress your emotions, don't cry about it. It's not a big deal. But, all of these things are really important to feel. So if you feel like you want to laugh with a friend, go ahead. If you want to just sleep for a couple of hours, sleep, right? And like you said, you don't have to feel guilty. Like, Naseem said
Mm-hmm.
it's your fault. It's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault, and yeah, we weren't taught those things, but that's why we're having these conversations for the future leaders and career changes that you can have a career or a business or a life without burnout with ease. But
Oh
the
yeah.
first step, I'm doing, how much I've grown. Like, this is why this topic is so important because I just learned all of this, like, right? Not even 2 years ago, or even now. I burn myself
Mm-hmm.
out. My partner has to tell me to slow down, right? So if, like, have someone tell you, hold yourself accountable. If you can't do it by yourself, like, put a timer, like have some practical
Mm-hmm.
strategy. Like put a timer, like close the laptop. So for me, like every time in the afternoon on a weekend, I have to take a power nap, right? So it's like those things that you don't need to feel guilty. Like if someone says like they, judge you, like it's fine. Let them say whatever they want. But if it's important to you, you do it. So feel those emotions for especially a woman. And then, yes, listen more to your body. And as for people who are career changes, it's something new. When I changed careers, I didn't know what that meant, right? So my family was never like, listen to your body, feel into it, feel the intuition.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to really take the time and like say, for example, if your hand is hurting, you have a headache, there's a sign, like that's what tells, like, body's telling you, like, you need to really slow down. So knowing these signals and really focusing on that, being intentional, is very important, right?
And the more
You can.
you said, yeah, you said something about like suppressing or like being taught to
Right.
suppress or not leaning into those emotions or whatever is coming up. And
Mhm.
the more you do that, the more you quiet it, right? You quiet yourself and
Right.
you lose yourself. And that also adds into the feeling of like not feeling like yourself, but not knowing what's wrong. So like
Mhm.
my work the past few years has been to reconnect with my internal self of like those things I ignored when I was in burnout and trying to like just push through the
Right.
exhaustion, push through all the
Yes.
things. And now I'm like, my body's like
Right.
almost muted. Like, well, you
Yes.
didn't listen to me. And
Right.
so
Right.
now I have to like get the voice back, get the
Right.
mic back to that part of me and start amplifying that voice, which isn't an easy thing to do. But I think you
It's
said
not.
something that reminds me of things that helped me were like creating these mini rituals, right?
Right.
Like and how important they are of like telling you or cueing to you that okay, now it's time to do this thing or
Yeah.
now it's time to do that thing or whatever, right? So like I implemented, actually, it's been almost a year since I did this. I started coloring in the mornings. Before I
Yes.
opened up my laptop, before I read my emails, I got like a couple of coloring books and
Same.
some nice little markers. And there's a candle, a specific candle that I light
Mm.
right before I do it. So it tells my body, this is what you're going to focus on. You're not going to focus on emails or anything like that. So I
Right.
just color at the start of my day. And then and sometimes I'll have a podcast playing or have
Yeah.
music or something or nothing, right? Just focus on the coloring. And then I give myself about 30 minutes and then, okay, time's up, blow out the candle,
Right.
move on. So sometimes building in some of those like either micro rituals or kind of like larger rituals are really important. And I think I got
Yeah.
that as an idea or inspired from it from, I think it was Atomic Habits. So if your
Yeah.
listeners have not read it or aren't familiar, that's where that idea of like the rituals and the cues kind of came from.
Yeah. And the microages are really important. And this week, like, honestly, like, I think, well, let me go back to last, like, couple of years ago. So, you know how it was a maximum energy. I would go at like 80 miles per hour. Like, I would just go, and similar to like executives, like, it'll go away. Like you said, pushing myself to my limit. And then that's when I got COVID. And I was like, okay, so why is this happening? But I think it was forcing, like, my body was forcing me to like slow down. I was like, this is a really good time. Like, I just had to slow down. I had to rest, right? And like you said, the body was it was just out. It was just out. And I was like, shoot, so you have to know beforehand, like, don't go to that limit of how can I just proactively look at it more intentionally. And every day set a ritual. Like you said, I love the coloring because I also loved coloring when I was a kid. It brings out your inner child. And as for
Yeah.
women, we're so stuck in that structure, the next meeting, the next content I have to post. But taking a few minutes to do something you love, which, like, coloring. I actually attended a women's group for meditation. It was just amazing. At night, I think we had a call with another woman, and she was like, we loved talking about like Disney movies, like just kind of going into that childish thing. And it's not like a childish, it's just really bringing out that little mini you, right? The inner child Naseem or inner child Mina, right? And just having those moments, you'll realize like during that pause, just kind of brings out more creativity out in you. So, and then you can be like, okay, so it's really that balance, right? So, absolutely. And I think
Yeah, and
in the
pausing
rapid
doesn't
fire,
equate like, yeah, sorry to
no,
interrupt, but like just like
no, no,
one
no,
final thing, like pausing doesn't equate anti-performance, right? Just because
right.
I'm coloring and I've built in some time at the beginning of my day
Yeah,
to do that, right? It doesn't mean that I'm not answering my emails, going to client sessions, doing all the things that I need to do, right? It's just a moment of, intentionally slowing down so that I can also show up that way for in my work, for my community, and in whatever other ways that I want to show up for, and places I want to show up in.
yeah, exactly. Right. And yeah, if like, and there's this lesson I had to learn, right? It's not about, because we're so focused on over giving, over performing, right? It's all about performance, hitting those KPIs, those numbers. But yes, those are important if you're an entrepreneur, but at the same time, like have like kind of be a little spicy, add in that creative piece to it. Like use like every woman especially has these gifts. Think of it, reframe it as a gift, right? So know
Yeah.
when to honor your boundaries, honor your inner voice and who you are. So it's all about really who you are. And I want to emphasize that for entrepreneurs that, people love you for your presence. And, of course, the work you do, but really like who you are as a person, who you are as a leader. And that's all they really want to see, right? That's the first thing. And that comes from your best version. And when you step into your best version, that really comes from that pause. So on all levels. And
Yeah.
it's not just as a coach or an entrepreneur, but even as a mother or a daughter or anything, right? You just show up better for everyone. Your relationships get better. It just tenfolds and the impact you're making. So absolutely. And yeah, literally, I think these are the questions I wanted to ask on a rapid fire round. So amazing. So one question. So if there was a tiny active play you recommend this week, one answer, what would you say for people who are listening?
I would say even just take 5 minutes out of your day, right? Like we can all do that. Like just 5 minutes to like step away,
Yeah.
even step out the door and just breathe in the fresh air for 5 minutes, if you can't go for a walk or do something else, right? Like even that, it helps because it just clears your mind and opens doors for clarity. And if you can go out for a walk, that's even better, right? Like you're getting some movement in outside, fresh air, etc. The Northeast, we're
Exactly.
getting balmy 40s now, so hopefully not
Yeah.
as cold to do that. But just even 5 minutes, right? Take 5-10 minutes out of your day, out of your time.
Mhm.
Just do that intentional reset. And
Yes.
and I it will make a world of change.
Yeah. And like Nassim says, have a cup of chai, if you like chai over here.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, that's what I'm gonna do. So yeah, what's next for you in 2026 this year for you? So any new initiatives, programs, for your business, or what's next for you in general?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on expanding some more offerings through Kimiya Coaching, and I'm building out a 6-week program, hopefully for later
Nice.
this year, for folks that want to be more intentional in this like kind of pause and play. So more to
Yeah.
come on that for sure. And I'm also just exploring myself
Yeah.
as a writer, and I have some
Yeah.
writing projects in the pipeline, potentially co-writing a book with a friend. So
Oh,
excited about that process. Yeah, just looking forward to this year, um, and supporting more folks, and also, being out there for myself and pausing and playing as I go along as
yeah.
well.
Yes. And this reminds us to also pause and play. And congrats to you for your new offerings. I hope it goes well. And as a writer, too. So I'm so glad that you're co authoring a book. As an author myself, it's a fun experience, right? So I would love to kind of, read your books, hopefully sometime soon. So that's amazing.
Would love
Yeah.
that.
So, yeah, of course. I'm always here to support women. That's what this is all about. And so, Nassim, what I appreciate most about this conversation is the reminder that clarity isn't forced, it's allowed, right? So we don't create courage by pushing harder. We create it by giving ourselves space to experiment. Pause isn't passive, play isn't frivolous. Together, they create agency. So, for everyone listening, here's a reflection. So, where might a deliberate pause unlock more clarity than another push? And what small experiment could you try instead of chasing certainty? Right. So, we talk about, yes, it's good to have intentions and put it out there, but detach from the outcomes and just have fun, just really be present. So, this conversation aligns deeply with the work I do in my Sovereign Aligned CEO program. So, supporting leaders in aligning strategy, identity, and presence so growth feels integrated, not extractive. So, because sustainable leadership doesn't rush healing, so it makes room for it. So, Nassim, thank you for modeling thoughtful courage in a world addicted to urgency and hustle. And to everyone listening this week, don't just ask what's next. You should ask what needs space, what wants to be explored. And your next level may not require more speed. It may just require more pause and a little bit more play.
Thank you, Vina, for having me.